It gives you an idea of the numbers. When you walk into the place about an hour before the graduation and it's dark like you're walking into a rock concert, and there's music and there's blues and there's jazz and there's theater and there's all this stuff, and they bring the people in. That first comes in the faculty, and they're playing, you know, this incredible blues music, and the faculty's coming in like this, you know, and they're just, I mean, you can just feel the energy and the aliveness that was present. And the chancellor gets up, and he's the first one to speak, and he gets up and he has his robes on and everything, and he says, stands there before the microphone, and he says, "We are Columbia College, and we are the biggest and the best at what we do." And he said it just like that, and I wanted to write him another check. I mean, that's how it felt. You know, I mean, you just could feel that sense of confidence. You feel like this was, you know, this was the right thing, you know, that moment. And then a little while later, they had this student speak, or a former student, who was a producer, director of theater in New York now, and he got up and he was there to get an award. I can't remember what the award was, but he was there to get this award, and so he got up, and of course he gave a short. They were all, I mean, these guys had it down. They were short speeches, you know, short, to the point. And he gave this speech, and he talked about himself as being a poster child for open enrollment, because he got out of he dropped out of high school, and then he got his GED, and they accepted him at Columbia, and he just took off. I mean, he was in his element. He just took off and became very successful at what he's doing. And he said in his presentation, he said, you know, he said, the secret to success is to place yourself in the path of the greatest number of fortuitous accidents possible. The secret to success. I want you to remember this. Now, this is a significant statement. It was the one thing that I brought back. To success is to place yourself in the path of the greatest number of fortuitous accidents possible. I mean, does that say it all? You know, and in unity, you know, we know there are no accidents. In unity, we know that there's this divine process that's unfolding in our experience, and our job is to pay attention. I mean, my whole job in life is to pay attention to what's going on, to be present in the moment, because all these fortuitous experiences show up in our life. They all happen in ways so we can't even imagine what's going to take place when we walk out the door in the morning, especially if we're tuned in, if we're looking for them, if we're watching for them. How many stories have you heard of somebody who ended and that turns out to be the love of their life, right? You know, just an accident that turned into a fortuitous moment, you know, because somebody showed up in a very powerful way. Last fall, I went to my daughter Caroline's soccer banquet. Most of you know that she's on a partial scholarship to the University of Idaho to play soccer. And Caroline is, you know, this athlete. And her whole life, you know, she's been the first chosen for the team. She's always got the award. She's always, you know, she's kind of had that sort of going. So she gets to college, which is a whole nother level, where everybody's good. Everybody was the athlete, right? You know, all that stuff. And so now she's on the bench. And her first year, she was okay with that. You know, she understands. She's a freshman. She kind of got along with it, so on and so forth. But the second year, she was frustrated. I could tell she was frustrated. And the girl that was playing ahead of her wasn't any better than her, according to her coach. But she had more experience. And she never got hurt the whole year. And so Caroline was on the bench. So I would go to the games and watch the games and so on and so forth. And then I went to the banquet because I wanted to be of support to her. And so I'm at the banquet, and they're going through the awards, right? Most valuable player, you know, all conference, you know, all this kind of stuff, you know. And so all of a sudden they came to most inspirational player. And the inspirational player is the one that's voted on by the teammates. And so the coach gets up and he says, well, the most inspirational player as voted by her teammates is Caroline Tolles. I'm going, what? So what? Oh. Where's that coming from, you know? And she gets up and goes up and gets the award and sits down, you know, and I said, okay, you have a story to tell me. You know, how did you get this award? Well, she said, afterwards, she said, I was frustrated, and she said, my first year here, I'd noticed in the locker room that it was really quiet before the games. And, but I didn't, I was a freshman, and I really couldn't, say much, And so this year, I decided that I was going to change that. And so I started organizing activities to get the team energy, to build their energy. And I'm not sure what activities, but they had some things that she learned and knew about and so on and so forth. She helped the team build this energy field. And they'd go out, and instead of coming out into the game flat, they would come out on fire, ready to go. And, they had they came one game from winning conference. The year before she got there, they were 1-19. Last year, they were 14-6. So you see the difference in the energy. And so then during the games, she got the girls that were on the bench to stand on the bench the whole game, and they wrote some cheers. And in the cheers, they used the names of the various players. And so when one of the players would have the ball and they'd be coming up the sideline, they'd start this cheer with her name. And of course, when you hear your name, what does that do to you? It energizes you. It gives you more focus and energy. And so I remember watching the games, and I'd look across the field, and our players were up on the bench, and they're jumping up and down, and the other players, are sitting on their bench, And I thought, well, I thought that was great, but I didn't, get that excited about it until after I heard the story. And so because of those things, the coach had called her in the office and said, Caroline, you're responsible for at least 4 or 5 of our victories, and this is your team. You are the leader of this team, and she's on the bench. Now, how do you do that? I couldn't have been more proud of her than if she'd won Most Valuable Player, All-Conference, and every other award. Because what happened is that she showed up in life in a way that made a difference in that moment, given the limitations that she was dealing with. Given that it wasn't what she was hoping for. And because of that, I know that when she goes out into the world, she will be successful at whatever she does, because she'll find a way to show up. And isn't that what it's about? It's finding a way to show up. I said, see, you listened all those years, Caroline. I can't believe you heard what I was saying, I had to take some responsibility for it. But, isn't that the way it is? These accidents, you might say that's an accident, but it isn't. It's a fortuitous moment. It's an experience that we create in our life experience. I think there are forces in the universe that are always working, that are bringing things together for good. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way. Sometimes it doesn't look that way, and it's like this past year for me has been a very interesting year. Actually, the past couple of years have been a bit of a roller coaster in my personal life. The things that I've been going through and dealing with and kind of working with. And those of you who are on Facebook, probably have some sense of where I'm at in my life experience. But a couple of years ago, when I was in the middle of dealing with a difficult period in my relationship and in my marriage, and I was still minister here, and I realized that it was not appropriate for me to bring that into the church. That it was not appropriate for me. People don't want to come to church on Sunday morning to listen to their minister growing on and on about their relationship, and what's going on and how they're working with it. And I was trying to show up in the right way, but it just didn't feel right. And part of my whole experience is that my ministry is about me telling my stories and showing up as a genuine person, that things happen in my life. And so when you find yourself in the situation where you can't anymore, where there's something there that you can't share, then it's time to make a change. It's time to move on. And so the experience of me moving on opened up the door for the fortuitous accident of Reverend Darlene, and for her to show up. And so all these changes kind of show up in a very powerful and wonderful way. And so it's like I told Tony yesterday that, I think today I might, go into full disclosure. And he says, well, does that mean you don't like us?